Ahoy! And welcome to the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. The Boating Hour brings you the latest and greatest essential information about everything that sails, floats, or motors upon the high seas of Southern California. From landlubbers to old salts, there'll be something for everyone. So climb aboard and get ready to sail with Captain Rick.
Ahoy out there, and welcome once again to the Boating Hour. I'm Captain Rick, and I want to thank you for joining us here on AM 870. We're here every Saturday at 4 p.m., and please be sure to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com. And now on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. Thanks to our sponsors for our show today. For a healthy gut, the best probiotic on the market, Livia One Probiotics, natural, organic, and allergen-free, and Raycom radios, reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California without drop zones and dead batteries and all the inherent problems that you get with your mobile phone. So today in studio, I got some wonderful guests. I promised you all month long we've been featuring the Coast Guard, the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Armed Forces Parade down in Torrance, which just happened, and Fleet Week at the Battleship Iowa. In studio, I have Lieutenant JG Joseph Ozwecki. What does LTJG stand for?
Hey, good morning. Lieutenant Junior Grade.
Got it.
Joseph Ozwecki. But thank you for having me, Rick. We've had, some history in the past. We did this last year, and I think we built a little bit of rapport, so I appreciate you bringing me back.
It's so exciting. You did such an amazing job. You really made that happen last year. Featured the Coast Guard, the featured branch at the Armed Forces Parade down in Torrance. And it's the oldest, longest running, most prestigious parade in the country. Been going on this is, I think, the 63rd year, with 3 years where they canceled it. And the Coast Guard came out with, they were fantastic. It was really wonderful. So I really want to thank you. We really made that happen. We had such amazing guests. I got a lot of response for that. That's why I really want to do this every year, feature the Coast Guard. This year, we weren't the featured branch. The Space Force was, and I had the commander on base, Colonel Walsh, was the guest last week. But Coast Guard had almost the same footprint. So we had the booths out there for the exhibits in the 5K run. So really, and I stumbled over your title. How do I address you? Can I address you as Lieutenant?
You could just call me Mr. Ozwecki. You can call me Joe for this next
that's exciting. Hour. All right, and with us, an amazing guest. I've never touched on legal in anything on this show, but today we have Lieutenant Commander James Doherty. Thanks for joining Captain Rick on the Boating Hour. And Joe.
I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
That is so exciting because when we think of any one of the armed forces, but we think of the Coast Guard, we think of the cutters, the search and rescue, and you guys now, it used to be drug intervention, now you got human traffickers, all kinds of stuff. But we think of the boats at sea. But you're in the legal community in the Coast Guard. Tell me how you got into the Coast Guard, and a little bit about your background. And what does legal do? What do you do as the legal operations in the Coast Guard?
Yeah, thanks. My background is I didn't know really anything about the Coast Guard. I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and I just don't remember having any memory at all of the Coast Guard existing until I got to college. And it's funny, I had a friend that was telling me he used to make fun of a guy in high school that would wear the boondockers and the camo pants every day, that was going to go be a Marine, and he and his buddies would mess with him and tell him that he was going to go to the Coast Guard. And that was meant to be derogatory, but I remember hearing it thinking, the Coast Guard, that's probably an easier branch to join. So I started doing some research. My siblings had joined the Marine Corps, the Navy. I had a best friend in the Air Force. So I knew the military was a great career. And then I started talking to a few retired people, and you'll hear kind of universally, retired folk will tell you the Coast Guard is the best kept secret in the military. So when I started looking into it, I realized that this could probably be for me. I love the ocean, but I get seasick, so maybe working on the coast would be a great idea. And I was interested in law. I'd worked as a court interpreter for Spanish speakers prior to joining the Coast Guard.
Wow.
So, so I went ahead and applied for OCS. I had a fantastic recruiter. You don't always get that, but I had a fantastic recruiter. And before I knew it, I was going off to officer candidate school.
That is amazing. Are you Latino? How did you get to be a Spanish interpreter?
No, I lived in Ecuador for 2 years, and I learned Spanish when I was there. And I came home, and I had a couple of mentors that gave me really good advice. They both kind of said, use your language skill for whatever you can get out of it. And one said to get certified in anything they would certify you for, and the other one said, capitalize on it. So I started looking, and the first thing I found was there was this legal certification for going into courts. And I'd never been in court. I didn't know anything about legal English, let alone Spanish. So I kind of got a self-taught language program and went and took the test. It was complete. It was just a shot in the dark, and I wound up passing, luckily, and then started this whole new career of traveling around in Missouri and Illinois interpreting for people in courts.
Well, that's an amazing career. What kind of legal are there cases? Do you prosecute? Do you defend? Are you working on the logistics of the legal problems of the bases? What are you doing in the legal? I guess are you JAG? Is that the proper? Or is that Navy?
Yeah, so we are JAG officers, and my career is a little bit unique, and this is the great thing about the Coast Guard and actually the Marine Corps as well. We're first and foremost line officers. That means that they can assign me to anything. Doesn't have to be a law billet. In fact, my current job right now, I'm the chief of inspections for Los Angeles and Long Beach. That means like all the vessel inspections that get done, all the facility inspections. I'm the guy that is in charge of that. But my last job was as a lawyer in New Orleans. I was the prevention lawyer, what we call prevention. It's really federal administrative law on the water. So we are technically judge advocate general officers when we're lawyers, when we're in that role. But unlike the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, they are specifically a JAG Corps, which means that those lawyers pretty much only do legal work. And that's like what their assignment is. That's what they're assigned as. We don't have a JAG Corps in the Coast Guard, but we are still considered JAG officers.
That's actually good to hear because it means there's not that many legal problems. Now, if you were doing divorce law, you'd be working 24 hours a day on terrible issues, Yeah, you mentioned the food. I'll tell you, the food, that may be the biggest secret in America, that the food in the Coast Guard is absolutely amazing. I was at the open house in where was that? Upland, and they had a new recruiting office, and they had a tent, and the Coast Guard Auxiliary was assisting in culinary. We had someone from the Coast Guard active duty and someone from the reserve, and they had a little tent, and they were making sliders, and they had ribs, and this is the stuff that's the coasties eat all day long. It was absolutely amazing, and the first time I was exposed to the food was at the L.A. Long Beach. They were dedicating the Terrell Horn, and he was on the halibut. And it was I think it was a drug interdiction or maybe human trafficking, and he died in the service, and they named the cutter after him. And I was running around taking pictures and working as PA, and I was asking everybody what 5-star catering company made this food because I wanted their name because I work a lot on events as well. I could not believe it. They were making the food and the cakes and everything that came out of the galleys on base and in the cutters that were docked. I could not believe how good the food was. I think if people come to some events, get a taste of the food and realize that's what they're going to be eating, that alone is going to bring them into the Coast Guard. What do you think?
It's funny you say that. When I was at Officer Candidate School, I got an ankle injury playing volleyball, and I wasn't able to go out on our big sailing ship, the Eagle. It was in the wintertime in the North Atlantic. I don't think I missed a whole lot. Instead, they sent me to a local sector, which was Long Island Sound. And the first day I ate in that galley, I was so shocked at how good the food was. I actually went up and asked to speak to what I called the chef at the time, because I didn't really know any better. And the guy came out, and I was like, man, I got to tell you, this is incredible food. He was very thankful to hear that, but I don't know that the people there realized how lucky they were to have, like, that level of competence of a culinary specialist.
It really is amazing. They're drawing a little bit from Coast Guard's down on recruiting a little bit. I don't know why, but they are, and so they're drawing from the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which I've talked a lot about on this show. I'm in the Coast Guard Auxiliary as well, the Civilian Volunteers. Founded on my birthday in 1939. Although I wasn't around. So yeah, it was really amazing. So with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, we're in the galleys. As a matter of fact, there's a couple of us that have taken the classes and gotten certified from the flotilla in Marina del Rey are actually on the cutters out there at sea when you guys are doing patrols. So it really is a wonderful thing. The food is absolutely amazing. You know, the Coast Guard, they have a lot of events. I was also at I forgot what they call it, the group that the businesses, the local businesses that support reservists. And Tom Lasser is going to come on the show in a couple weeks and talk about that. And what they do is they hire reservists. They have to be prepared to let them go when they're called out. And then they also feature, a lot of reservists. And food is just absolutely amazing. So, yeah, that's one reason to join. The culinary, when you become a culinary specialist and you join the Coast Guard, I found this out at the event a couple weeks ago. It's a $70,000 signing bonus. Do you know how people sign up? How do you find a recruiter? How do you get into the Coast Guard?
That's a good question. And I didn't know that. That's actually a fantastic sign-on bonus. We have a similar sign-on bonus finally on the legal side as well. So I'm going to talk about kind of both those paths. For the normal side, if you're going to enlist and go into something like a culinary specialty or become like a marine science technician like we have here that work with me, you would go to your local recruiter, and that's easy to Google, just Coast Guard recruiter. I will be totally honest to say that not all recruiters are created equally, and so one of the things I learned when I came into the Coast Guard, I actually tried to come in right out of college, and I think it was like 2006. And the recruiter at the time, and that particular recruiter told me he was not interested in talking to me.
Really?
Fast forward just a couple of years, and I have a recruiter that was excited to talk to me and did all the work. And that's with every single service. I had the same experience because when I applied the second time, I thought, well, the Coast Guard told me in the past they didn't want me, so I'll also apply to the Air Force. But at that time, the Air Force recruiter was the one who was pretty incompetent, and as opposed to the Coast Guard. So I would say that anybody who's interested, there's nothing wrong with recruiter shopping, right? If you're not getting what you need out of one office, you can definitely call another one, because not all workers are the same. That's on the one side is if you want to join the Coast Guard in general. On the legal side, I'm actually the legal recruiter here for Southern California, and even though I'm not in the law job, I'm the only lawyer for the Coast Guard in all of kind of the Southwest. So my job is to go out to all of the different law schools, kind of explain to them how the law works in the Coast Guard, and then I get them set up with a recruiter locally or another recruiter if that one's not working, and then we'll go through a whole program or a whole process with headquarters to kind of get their packet looked at. And as far as what we do, you'd asked earlier what we do as lawyers in the Coast Guard. Law in the Coast Guard is fascinating. It's way more broad than I think any other organization that I've heard of, even the other military organizations. And the reason for that is that not only do we do all of the military type of law that you think about with like court-martials and administrative investigations and giving command counsel for operations, but we also have a very public-facing part of our job in the Coast Guard. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. We're like every other agency, but on the water. And that includes like the DMV, the FBI, the EPA, OSHA. We're doing all those types of jobs on the water. So whenever complicated questions come in related to like federal regulations, Coast Guard lawyers are the ones that handle those questions especially when they get overly complex. So when I was in New Orleans, I was handling a lot of industry questions coming from, for example, the Outer Continental Shelf. They would have questions like, or coasties would have questions about how to implement certain laws on the Outer Continental Shelf. Those would all come to me. I would find a solution and then, route that through headquarters to get it approved. So it's a very broad. I'll give you one other example that I think a lot of people don't know about. When people say in law school they want to be like an environmental lawyer, for example.
Yeah, what does that mean?
It can mean a couple of different things, and I think what people want it to mean is that they're going to protect the environment, right? But environmental law, just like any type of law, has two sides. There's those that protect the environment and would sue the government or hold the government accountable or hold other actors accountable when they do something wrong. And on the other side, there's those that would protect the bad actors, right? They're still environmental lawyers, but their job is to protect the polluters. Now, the other military branches, when a lot of them are environmental lawyers, their job is to kind of help the federal government stay within the regulatory guidelines for what they have to do in order to build a new base somewhere or to deal with a certain program. On the Coast Guard side, and that's important work. On the Coast Guard side, though, we actually use environmental law to prosecute people that pollute and that break the law. So whenever ships come in and they've got bad oil record book records and they've been discharging at sea, we hold them accountable. We are the ones that we're involved with the investigation of that entire process, and then we additionally coordinate with Department of Justice attorneys at headquarters in D.C. and also local, and then we will help them prepare their case against those individuals.
Oh, interesting. Do you bring in people and then send them to law school, like I know in ROTC, or do you you look for law graduates to come into the Coast Guard as a career after they've passed one of the bars?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do both, and we do it about half and half. You will usually get 7 to 10 lawyers from outside that will bring in, and they come in directly as lieutenants, so they come in at the rank of 03, which is a really nice perk that the other services don't offer, on the one hand. And then on the other hand, we will send our own officers to law school, which I can tell you, I did that. It was the best 3 years of not just my career, but maybe my life, because,
Where'd you go to law school?
Well, that's going to answer the question of why. It was in Hawaii.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. When I applied for the program, I spent my first year as an investigator or an inspector in Seattle. My second year, I was an investigator in Anchorage. I applied to law school. Well, once they pick you up from the program, you just have to go to a law school that is fairly close to where we'd have one of our legal offices. Honolulu's a legal office we have, so I was like, I know exactly where I'm going to spend the next 3 years of my life, and it was phenomenal.
Are you a surfer?
I became a surfer in law school, and I am a proud surfer today, yes.
Oh, that's so exciting. I have trouble getting up. I paddle around in the whitewash. That's what I do now.
Yeah, well, I did that for a while until I finally figured it out. But it was I actually scheduled my law school to go to school 2 days a week, load my classes up on those days, and then surf the other 5. So It was a really good time.
When you travel, when you moved around, because it sounds like you've done a little bit of moving around, your family come with you. Let's talk about your family, because you got what, 4 boys?
I do, yeah. So I've got 4 boys. I have my 16-year-old. He lives with me here in Los Angeles, and then my 3 other sons are in Louisiana. I have a son that's in college studying computer science, and then I have my other 2 live with their mom in Louisiana. So, yes, they have traveled with me, depending on wherever I'm stationed. This is an interesting kind of fact that I learned after joining the military. So I knew the military was a great deal just by seeing other people's lifestyles, right? They had great work-life balances. In fact, some of them had great life-work balances. They seemed to be home more than they were at the unit. But they also had all these other perks where they were going cool places, they were doing cool things. And one of the things about the Coast Guard is that it's very open, right? We have policies, we have things that we have to do, which Joe could tell you. He works in the office with me. There's a very rigid training program, and there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to master. However, the Coast Guard is very open to creativity, and if there's something that you're interested in, the Coast Guard is supportive of that. So, and in my case, because even though I'm not working as a lawyer now, I got the go-ahead from headquarters to start this legal internship here in my office in Los Angeles. So I go around to the law schools in Southern California, and then I'm able to offer this opportunity for anyone interested to come in and work with us for a summer or, get externship hours during the school year. And we get them out to go do the fun Coast Guard stuff that we do, and then they also get to work on actual Coast Guard projects during that time. In addition to that, I'm part of an international legal training group. And so I go on trips with lawyers from the other branches, including the other DOD branches, and we go overseas to do legal capacitation in other countries. So like this year, I have Guatemala lined up, I have Argentina lined up. These are the kind of the cool, exciting trips that we get to go on, and sometimes I can take my family with me. And I've done that in the past. I've taken them with me. I had a trip to Canada one time and took the kids up there with me to do inspections. And I look forward to doing that in the future. The other thing I was going to mention is, because of the way the military is you have so many days of vacation, which is very hard to get on the outside. So we get 30 days of leave a year, and those can accumulate. I was able to take a lot of overseas trips with the kids. I took them to New Zealand. I took them to all the Hawaiian Islands. We went to Costa Rica. We were able to do all those things because we had these big blocks of time that we were able to take off.
God, that's amazing. Well, let's hear from Lieutenant J.G. Ozwecki. Are you inspired to go into law? Are you ready to go to law school?
I would say after the last few years working under Lieutenant Commander Doherty, he's definitely piqued my interest with all of his stories. And this is just a fraction of what you're hearing right now. There's hundreds more. So definitely, it's something I've looked into. Absolutely.
Well, if you stay in L.A., don't practice divorce law or personal injury. It is a brutal business. Stay in the. One of my favorite shows was the Navy show Jag, but all the episodes were about people in the Navy getting into trouble and then defending the Navy when they were sued. I think it's a little different ball game, and all they did was show up in the office and handle cases. I don't know how reflective that is of the Navy. Well, today going on all day today, it's June 1st, is the big Marina Del Rey. They have an amazing halibut tournament. So they got the fishermen out there, and we've stocked all kinds of stuff up. We're going to get someone from the halibut competition, from the fishing tournament, to come talk about how they did and how we're loading up, how some of the hatcheries are loading up with bass. So we'll talk about that. But if you're hearing us now and you're in Marina Del Rey, go check out at Burton Chase Park. They'll have all kinds of exciting stuff, and then we're going to have somebody on that. God, this went by so quick. Lieutenant J.G. Ozwecki, I have to call and ask you to come back next week.
Hey, no problem. We can make that
this
happen.
Flew by so quick. I know we barely scratched the surface on everything we're doing. We spent the whole month trying to feature the Coast Guard, the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We had the Space Force commander, Colonel Walsh, who I believe is going to Washington, D.C. That was a great show. That was last week. Oh no, it was the week before. So it was the day of the actually Armed Forces Parade. Last year, did you get a chance to go to when the Coast Guard was the featured branch at the Armed Forces Parade?
I was actually not here yet. I transferred to Los Angeles in late July.
Oh, okay. So you missed it. It was absolutely amazing. It was a wonderful footprint, and the Coast Guard, I hope, is going to have the same footprint every year. So they switch off all the branches. Of course, the Coast Guard will be the featured branch in a couple of years from now. Next year is the Army. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And then the Air Force, and then the Navy, then the Marines, and then back to the Coast Guard. So that's wonderful. Well, that's all the time that we have for you today. I had such wonderful guests. We barely scratched the surface. I want to invite you back, Lieutenant Commander Doherty. I want to invite you back to talk more about your career, about the Coast Guard, about your family, about your travels. So I want to invite you back at a future date. So definitely I'm going to keep your number. And anything you want to promote or plug going on in the Coast Guard, definitely let me know. And Lieutenant J.G. Ozwecki, you're going to come back next week.
I'll come back. I love Glendale.
Yeah, this is really exciting here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick. We have such wonderful guests. We're so very fortunate. And let's not forget the Coasties, protecting our waters, America's lifesavers and guardians of the sea. Remember, if you do it right and follow the guidelines and safety precautions, there's no place like being out on the water in the fresh air and sunshine in beautiful, sunny Southern California. Here at the Boating Hour with Captain Rick, we cover everything that sails, motors, and floats from San Diego to Santa Barbara. Thanks for being with us today. Please be sure to join us next week and every Saturday at 4 p.m. on AM 870. And thanks to our sponsors for the show today. For a healthy gut, Livia One Probiotics and Raycom Radios. Reliable two-way radios throughout Southern California without drop zones and dead batteries. Mobile Relay Associates, Raycom Radios. Don't forget to visit us on the web at theboatinghour.com and now on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. Coming up next week, all kinds of exciting guests all month long. And next week we'll have Lieutenant J.G. Ozwecki back on the show. Keep your emails coming. This is Captain Rick saying ahoy and fair winds to all.